Continuing from last time we were taping, I wanted to be sure, or try to be sure, that you people can start to see for yourself, even using the examples, but to see it just everywhere, that the mortal affairs, speaking again in that kind of artificial category of me calling it the secondary affairs, the things that would not be at a very crude telling level, that would not be absolutely required to just keep you alive, more or less. But in all other affairs, to realize, even though that they continually, indubitably, seem to be irresponsible, unprofitable, frustrating, trite, sometimes apparently impossible, such as bureaucracies, dealing with them. But to see that even if that's the way it appears to be, which is not a flawed view when you're down at city level trying to get your tag, trying to get your driver's license renewed, for instance. But to see that this operation, the way it is set up, it is meant to specifically be like that. All of the bureaucracies of the world, and the greatest expansion of that term, all the bureaucracies in the world are set up just right. All of the discussions in the world, all of the arguments going on amongst people, academically, financially, two people discussing what movie they're going to, all of those disagreements of all natures are schemed, sculptured, and set up and operating at peak efficiency. All of the impossible dreams, all of the unbeatable foes with which people are involved, these situations are absolutely right on the money. And all inexplicable, opaque explanations are stupor perfecto. They are just exactly right. Well, that's enough of examples. We're going all the way from bureaucracies of all nature. Everything that is more than one person, everything that is more than you can look at as being a bureaucracy. You can look at another person being a balkanized bureaucracy of their own, trying to deal with your sexual partner, trying to deal with your business partner. You can look at it, him or her, as being a kind of pre-League of Nations with no translators. Or that you are sitting there looking at your partner, and it is one of the forms of balkanization of that poor peninsula, and inside of him are Serbs and Slavs and Turks and Greeks. And you're trying to deal with the person, you think, and you're dealing with a bureaucracy. All right, all the way from that example to the one I tried to put the finish on. All inexplicable explanations, which are every first story in the world, which are all explanations at the city level, is they end up being opaque. They end up, if you had a mind at all that had any pretenses to wandering to new building sites, all explanations are inexplicable. That is, they explain nothing. They explain just enough, as that great philosopher Chris Christopherson, I think, said, to help you make it through the night. And in this case, though, it's just enough to help you make it through life. Just to hear the explanation of what in the hell is going on here, and suddenly a rabbi falls out of a tree, a priest jumps up out of the bushes, Louis Ruckhauser jumps up behind the sofa, somebody leaps out and they say, "Hey, we'll tell you what's going on," and they tell you. And perhaps you say, "Are you actually know what you're doing?" And they have a card that either says expert or bureaucrat. And you go, "Well, all right." And so then they give your explanation. And then, of course, if you look, all experts give their explanations. That is the city itself. That is the end of life's own nervous system into which we are plugged. Every time it gives an explanation, you just don't really notice it. But every time it gives one, it goes. Now you got to know how to look, because oftentimes you don't see that look. Do I have to translate the look? The look is, are they buying this? Are they buying this? Because very often, if you're simply looking through your own city eyes at the city scenario, such as a judge or an expert or a Louis Ruckhauser, and a man makes a statement, he says, well, I'll tell you exactly what's going on, kid, now that you ask. And they go, la da 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 da. And they get through, and they look like, huh. That is, they look like that they said something, they look like they know what they're saying, but if you can see beyond that three-dimensional level, you'll also see behind that, they're going, huh? Like, is this going to sell? Is this going to fly? Are these people going to swallow this? Because they don't know. Nobody knows. But all of this, of course, you people here seeing this has been around a while. I know that seems superfluous, although it takes seconds for me to continually say, for people that might be seeing this on tape or etc., that was not accustomed to it, for me to continue to say, I am not being mordant or sarcastic. It's not an attack on life. Do understand, the reason I say that is any observation that you would make about this, if you're ordinary, is an attack on life. For a very simple reason. It's supposed to be a bleeding attack on life. That's why this stuff's going on. For somebody to stand up, even in the city, an ordinary person to stand up and say, which this happens periodically, it's of no big deal and it does not make People magazine. But for a person to stand up that is wired and primed up to be fairly run by the higher end of the nervous system, they can stand up and say, I would like to point out, let me make a good example. I don't know whether it's great. Let us say it's a meeting at some great university. And it's the head of the faculty department and all the people, and they're sitting around having a discussion about this and that. And somebody stands up in that context and says, well, I must point out that our meetings, these quarterly meetings, we seem to spend far too much time arguing. Perhaps the rest of you would not like to use this term, but someone who has been appointed at a previous meeting to look into a certain area and to come back with suggestions, we end up, I suggest to you, not that far removed from less educated, less professional people, arguing over the petty aspects of what we should be doing insofar as moving this great institution of higher learning, blah, blah, blah. It is still a cheap-ass, sarcastic shot at the bureaucracy of life, even though it apparently is done with all the best intentions, even giving a good shot, as far as the city is concerned, at an objective detailing of the problem. It's still a sarcastic remark. But now wait. Now see, if that's all it was, and we were just ordinary folks, I could have done this, I assume you know, in some way that would have elicited some laughter along the way. And we could all, apparently, if we were ordinary people, go, ha, 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 laugh at the guy that did it, laugh at the nature of life, laugh at higher education, laugh at the pretenses of people who are so involved. And it would be a sarcastic remark. And then I could say, wait a minute. As some people might think this is, if they didn't hear it long enough and were wired up to hear it, then I say, wait, we're not actually laughing at that. And then an ordinary person, is anybody following this? Then an ordinary person can go, well, now wait. Then you're about to say that being sarcastic and laughing at other people, whether it seems to be deserved or not, you're saying that in some spiritual or metaphysical or meta-spiritual way that we shouldn't do that. See, you missed it again, if that's what you would think. Did you follow it? All right, at ordinary level, there's always somebody criticizing. You know that, don't you? Go back and look at Homer. Everybody is always going, nah. Historians, I mean, that's their nature. But everybody has been pointing and finding fault. Adam, Eve, everybody was finding fault. So you could attack finding fault. And you could say something was wrong. But from that same level, you could say, now wait. I do not believe, I'm speaking for an ordinary person now, you could say, I do not personally believe in just some kind of blanket condemnation of human activities. But sometimes it might be proper insofar as it might encourage remedial action, that we might be able to reform some of the things properly being criticized. And I've got to tell you, so you missed it. That's the way it's supposed to be. And then an ordinary person say, well, what? Which one? Yeah? Well, no, which one? You're the one that made up the example. Which one of the two you talking about? Right. Yeah. It's supposed to be, by all ordinary observation, it. Fill it in. It is supposed to appear to be everything from absolutely frustrating, the epitome of inefficiency, trite on the hoof, useless, and maybe just damned impossible. Why are we even trying this? Why do people still get together in some sort of groups and even talk about this kind of stuff? It gets us nowhere. I've read history, and we continue to do it. Right. Well, we got to straighten this out. Fine. Well, don't be sarcastic about it. I'm trying not to be. But you are. Everybody is. That's part of it. You don't understand. All right, I'll put it to you another way. It is easy to be critical of critics. They're one of the easiest, down the city, just ordinary term critics. They must be the original, the first dictionary. Back when, what was his name? Dick who? You know, that's who it was named after, if you remember. I didn't know you'd fall for that one. If you'd fall for that one, I'd got to ask you, do you know who invented the Franklin stove? It was Ben Stove. Well, see, Dick and dictionary, but never mind. It had to be, under the first dictionary, when it had sitting duck, there had to be a picture of a critic. You know, Rex Reed or one of his progenitors. Critics are the easiest people in the world to take a shot at. It's just the easiest thing in the world, say a literary critic, to point out. Well, I guess one of the oldest is those who can do and those who don't teach. And right after somebody did that, somebody said, wait a minute, whoa, those who can do and those who can't and can't teach become critics. That's old as hell. It still works. All you got to do is point out to a critic, whether he's a critic for a living or even somebody in the world of academia, say, teaching creative writing. And of course, they're going to be critical because everybody in the city is critical. You don't have to be a professor. All you got to do is have any sort of decent job, such as working in the circus, cleaning out septic tanks. You're a critic. But at any rate, a critic, somebody can make a critical remark, and it's the easiest thing in the world to say, hey, who are you to criticize Philip Roth, Herman Melville? You're teaching here. I know about how much you're making. My father contributes money. He's an alumni. I know how much you make. Who in the hell are you to criticize? If you knew how to write, you wouldn't be here. You'd be writing for a living. That works. It always works, and all critics have to go. Of course, it's dangerous in school because at least they can strike back in failure. But out in real life, if they're doing it for a living, to attack a critic's the easiest thing in the world. Back to where you were. Do you understand, though? Do you understand? Literally, there would not be anything performance-wise without those who are critics. There would not. Now, you can say, if you're ordinary, that you can put on a Broadway show, that you can produce books, and they will be in some way advertised, and that we could do without critics. You don't understand. And it's not because things deserve to be criticized. Well, is it because they don't deserve? No. How come we cannot sit down and discuss things and come to some mutually agreeable decision? Why do we have to sit around in a business? How do we have to sit around? How come the church, institutes of higher learning, how come they have to get together and close the door, go into secret meetings and discuss things and argue over what Jehovah would do under these conditions? what Dr. Johnson would do were he alive here to help guide us. Why do we have to argue over these things? How come we can't be more efficient? They don't understand. If I'm not making this clear enough, imagine some people discussing anything. Academic subjects, financial affairs. And imagine that you're outside the door. You and many other people. Let's say that you're the epitome of a good middle class, middle of the bell curve representative of life. And they're discussing something that the answer seems obvious. You can't believe that these people are arguing over what they're arguing. That it's something as motherhood, apple pie, feeding the hungry. And they're in there discussing things, and the people who seem to be causing the trouble in there, you know some of them personally, or maybe you know them by reputation. And their reputation, the books they write, the speeches they make, you can't believe they're doing this. It is bureaucracy, the insanity of people getting in groups, and how things will not operate efficiently. They just do not understand. And me to say, well, they're not supposed to operate efficiency is not the mathematical, it is not the manifold, it is not a five-dimensional description of it, because that's not true. But if you take that and put it with what people ordinarily think, and you could get it in at least a four-dimensional Cuisinart, you might get somewhere. It's not just the question of it being, this is inefficient. Even at that level, they could not be more incorrect. It's the height of efficiency. You're helping fuel it if you're there complaining. You're adding to it. It's like somebody standing around saying, well, there's a brush fire. It's going to burn us all up. It's going to ruin us. And you're standing there, and you're feeding the fire. It's eating up your pants leg. You're contributing toes. You spit into it, and it turns out that your saliva is flammable. Your criticism of it. Your criticism of it is part of it. When you begin to see, and efficiency is not really it. I have to keep following on that term. Because if you see it, it is sort of the last chance to get gas in a three-dimensional desert. That's about the last thing you could go, oh, God, efficiency. And then after that, you've launched your own Sputnik. Because then you don't need that anymore and you understand why I say it. But it is, even at the three-dimensional verbal level, all I can call it is the height of efficiency. And not the efficiency that people say it should be in the city. Even those people who now have jobs in charge of what they call them systems operations are people in charge of efficiency. And what's their main job? Is to criticize. Well, that's what they get paid for. And so they go around and they criticize operations. They're paid. Somebody says, come in here and we'll pay you to make us more efficient. And so they pay this guy to come in and criticize and tell what's wrong. And he believes, since everybody's consciousness, everybody's intellect is episodic, he thinks, well, I'm separate from this. In fact, I didn't even know this business. It's the toilet paper manufacturer business, and they want me to come in, my company, and to make them more efficient. So I never knew anything about toilet paper, except that it seemed to be semi-necessary. So he comes in, he and his, well, let's say one guy. He comes in, he's paid a handsome sum. But what's he being paid for? To criticize. But as far as he's concerned, if I was dumb enough to say, do you realize you're now part of this? He said, well, no, I'm over here working. I'm on a contract. They paid me to come in here. And you understand. He would take it at the very least, or at the very best, as being some sort of absolutely inane metaphor that I must be making. I'm not part of this guy's business. I'll be here maybe another week, and I'm gone. Now I'm on to somewhere else. I've already got my next job. And so he feels as though, correctly so, that he is not a part of the XYZ toilet paper company. And the toilet paper company does not feel like he's part of them. He's an outside systems analyst. He is a man paid to come in. But his criticism is part of it. Well, how much more down home can you get than to talk about toilet paper example? Well, I think enough of you have your own view of that. There is no way to really carry that in any apparently straightforward direction any further verbally. It just begins to eat itself to death. It just becomes a moving dial symbol. It becomes a snake not only eating his tail, but eating everybody else's tail and then eating his own lips. Because three-dimensional intelligence just gets so far with it, and it'll go, well, yeah, I see that. And then like it skips. like a groove in a record, and it skips over it. Or else it bounces you back to where you were. And you feel like, well, yeah, oh, no, well, yeah, what? Wait, I got the point. No, wait a minute, there is no point. That's the point. Wait a minute, I lost it. I was just of the suspicion that many of you, seeing as how government, bureaucracy, is so much a part of city life. It is, in effect, city life, but even now verbally, even more so than your grandparents. Instead of you being out there and you having to worry about the weather and bringing in the crops, now a great deal of human, civilized conversation, which is, of course, thought, is about government. Even when you're not using the term government, you're talking about the life of the city. You're talking about, in some way, even if it's the world of academia, and they're talking apparently about nothing except what goes on there on campus. But you should know by now, without me having to reach for even immediate, much less extreme examples, they are ending up constantly talking, at least tacitly, about government. They're going to be talking about regulations, whether they specify or not, grants, student loans, what seems to be the collective institution, the umbrella of government, is now such a strong part of a contemporary life that I thought would be the great example. But I was going to also, now that we've done that, go beyond that particular electrical, sociological example. And how about just make a bold leap just forward as best you can. Just toss caution to the wind, assuming the wind's in the right direction. And try it this way. And just simply say that working for life is the ultimately useless, supremely necessary endeavor. Because that's it. For you people getting this on delayed tape, I must repeat, no sarcasm, not whatsoever, except at city level it's all sarcasm, it's all criticism. Anything you say is part of what you're talking about. Anything you say is criticism. If it's not criticism, it's defense of what you're doing. And if you're making defense of what you're doing, then you're criticizing those who are attacking you. You're criticizing those who find fault. You cannot win. Nobody wins in a debating team unless you had two teams, which is a form of a dance. And one of them reaches such a point that they're not only overwhelming the other team, but they're overwhelming themselves. The only way that you would know in a debate, which always has what? Count them. Any dance has, but any debate, if one of the sides actually won, which they'd have to beat themselves after they beat the other side, no way that they would actually, that you could know if they won, is if they suddenly went poof and they disappeared. That, they would have gone, not to live with Elvis, but they would have gone to another more complex world, let us say. That's the only way they could have won, because in a debate you do not win. In a discussion you do not win, because there's not a battle. A critic does not win, because there's none to criticize. He is part of it. Thusly, as I was going to try and get you to see, we can take it from the world of bureaucracy into the world of life, that there is no escape. And I was not being sarcastic in my description, and so you could look at toiling for life, which no matter who you work for, if you get past seeing bureaucracy, you work for life. And working for life is the ultimate futile, ultimately necessary endeavor. And of course, you can challenge your own brain, your own intellect, with those two adverbial phrases. Supremely necessary. Can you get out of it? Now, you may not find it necessary. At first, you may say, well, it's not necessary. But if you'll just take in the broad sense when I'm describing that everyone works for life, you got to go if you got any pigeons at home, you have to say, well, yeah, if any of them's returned to you. I know a lot of you thought you let them go years ago and the wind turned on you and that's why they're not back, but that's what you get for hanging around the rooftops in the wrong part of Manhattan. But everybody should be able to see that, yes, I work for life, if you want to put it that way. All right, to say that it is supremely necessary, whether you think it's necessary or not, my challenge was, go quit. I guess if you want we'll have to go into extreme adverbs and adjectives again. If you'd like, how about the epitome of a running in circles hobby? Maybe that's it. I thought some of us had foolish hobbies, like some of you, whoever it was in here that was trying to collect one 2x4 from every civilized country in the world. But that would be the hobby, is to try and resign, try to quit, or try anything. Try to get a few days off, try to take sick leave, but try and quit working for life. Now there's a hobby. There's a hobby that will take you to the grave. You'll never run out of that hobby because you'll spend the rest of your life just trying to find the counter. I'm ready to quit. I'm serious about this. Just show me, just point me in the general direction, by God. I'm cashing in. Now, I don't care what happens, I'm cashing in. All right, let's assume you're telling the truth. You got a hobby. You got a hobby that has no end. Suffice to say, I was hoping, it is supremely necessary. That is, you cannot resign. This side of suicide, and we're discounting that. The other part, the other clause, phrase I put in, it is the ultimately useless. Now, in the city, ordinary people do not necessarily say it that way. I know in bad moments they'll say, yeah, it is. But I was referring to you people. Assuming that you have enough of the potentially neural basis in your own nervous system, up in your own brain, that every now and then sparks enough, whether you can put it in words or not, it's not important, that you have interest that you do not see manifested in the bureaucracy of life, that there are no things going on in any organized way. There's just no things going on in life, that is out there apparently, that feed this. We'll assume outside of us meeting here. That is, if you're going to find it, it seems to be in here. So what goes on out there in life, some of it may be a hobby to you. You may enjoy putting around with your car, repairing small home appliances or rodents. You may enjoy collecting postcards and miscellaneous pieces of lumber. But you would say that is really, I can take it or leave it. I like my hobby. But I do not consider anything that life has to offer. My job, my hobbies, vis-a-vis my real interest, whatever this is. My real interest, in comparison to this, my personal interest, the rest of that is just useless. It kills time. You got to do something. Some of it I can't escape. I'm not rich. I have to work. But insofar as just you and I talking, do you find any of that to be useful? No. Some of it is necessary for me to pay the rent. A lot of it is just busy work. It's just really hobby. It's just something I do. I'm sitting around and nothing else to do. I turn on the TV. I go look at my postcards I've collected. But necessary? No. So the full term, I was going to encourage you or ask you if you'd like to make that kind of bold leap forward and just wrap up this part and say, we're working for life. And the toiling for life, which, to set off the sentence in the beginning again, is inescapable. And if anybody disagrees with that, I assume nobody here will, but anybody that might be seeing this on tape, if you think it's inescapable, then of course you won't be having to be subjecting yourself to this tape, this kind of stuff anymore, because you can be out with a real hobby, finding out how to escape it. But the inescapable part is we're all working for life, whether you know it, whether you don't know it, whether you're working for your uncle, whether you're working for the government, whether you're unemployed. You're working for life. And working for life can be seen as being the ultimately useless, futile, trite, supremely inescapable, supremely necessary endeavor. And I don't care what the Dan Quayles and Popes and Jimmy Swaggarts of the world say, I think that about wraps it up. There is a little side that I might point out. If you could, I'm assuming everybody's up to that point and go, yeah, all right. At least you can do it for the night. At least you can do it for a few minutes until I change the subject. And you think, God, I was going to remember that. See, there are earthquakes even in virgin territory. Like I had it over there. I was beginning to set up this little lean-to where I can think about new stuff. And it's like every now and then, it's like my own brain turns into, and I sort of lose my place. I was going, funny I should say that. Ha-ha, all right. I was going to say if you would expand from where you were, ha-ha. I was going to give you another kind of a side line. Not a sideline, but a side line. Not just ordinary working for life, toiling out into the vineyards of futility. But people who think they're involved with something a little out of the ordinary. People who think they're involved with trying to improve themselves, expand their consciousness, be more intelligent, be more aware, whatever. Which would seem to be a little more apropos, I bet that some of you think, more apropos to this. Little as they know. But in that regard, I was going to give you another line, and that is that men would not be searching for the way unless they believed that they had lost it. Now, searching for the way, I do not mean, of course, not trying to imply in any way. I'm sure some cult somewhere, probably some religion or some subclass in some religion has used that term, I have no doubt. I was using it in the widest sense. People searching for the way. That is, people, and life is full of them. They write books, they're on television. Some of them do hide in bushes and drop out of trees. But people who believe that they're searching for the way, what do they call it then? They're searching for something, for a way to scratch a place that they itch, and they do not seem to have any salve, any treatment available in the city. And so they're looking for the way. Something more than just a new car, a new house. And it seems to be, always has been, it seems to be a reasonably admirable attempt. But I refer you back. People would not be, men would not be searching for the way unless they believed that they had lost it. I don't have to go back and refer to the E thing again, do I? The efficiency thing. You people who might be seeing this on tape, try your best to wipe the sarcasm out of your ears. It's unnatural, but try it just for a second. When I say searching for the way, people in life, all the way nowadays from people involved with the ecology movement, people involved with, right now in 1990, they're calling it the New Age movement, people involved with religion, people involved in all kinds of directions, nothing new, but there are people in life who are not out there drunk every night, holding up fruit stands and 7-Eleven stores, watching TV. The world has always been full of people who apparently have higher interests, grander desires. They've always been there. What the libraries, the bookshelves are full of them. Many of you are full of them. It seems to be an admirable attempt. No attack on the people. It seems to be quite admirable that people, whether it be within the confines of institutionalized religion, or whether it seems to be off on some splinter cult groups, or whether it's a guy out meditating, attempting to by himself out in the woods as a hermit, trying to in some way get in touch with the universe, get in touch with himself, get in touch with the gods, that almost all of humanity, the middle class, the middle of the bell curve of humanity, even if they're not religious, even if they do not attend any sort of organized worship, even if they're not a part of any kind of cult, ordinary people, you all know this, you could get them aside and say, do you think there's more to life than just this? You know, just us stand here, out here on a street corner, and pollution, and is there more? And everybody going to go, yeah. Yeah. All right. So the searching for the way, to varying degrees, it does not mean that the masses of humanity in any way spend any amount of time that could be discernible. But there are many people who are observably involved with searching for the way. And the rest of them, as I said, as you should know, check your own nervous system, even on a cold or even on a real warm day, will say, yeah, there's more to life than this. And you could even say, well, I'm making no pitch, but do you feel that just in general, that you and me and everybody else, that we should actually be doing more to get along the way, or to get in touch with our better selves or with the better forces? And again, the middle class, the sane part of humanity, the plebeian part of humanity that's right there in the middle of life's trunk, where it's connected to us, would go, yeah, I should. So all the way from just somebody that would agree to it when it was pointed out to them or asked, all the way from that to people who spend a good part of their observable life pursuing the way, searching for the truth. All of that, note, men would not be searching for the way, searching for the right track, unless they were made to believe that they were off of it, that they had lost it. The E thing. Well, I was going to ask a question here, and it may only be one or two of us worthy of responding, so I'll have to take up for some of you while you mull it, ruminate on it, off on your own. But I was going to say, do you realize what this information that I've just given you, were it to fall into the wrong hands, and the wrong brains, what it would do to our present unemployment figures? Even though he's not directly connected to the government, I suggest that somebody like Brother Ruckhauser and some of the people from the present administration would probably want to leaf out and whip up on whoever put out this information, because that would not look good, what that would do. You may not even lost somebody who was doing this. I thought that would help. If people did not believe that they were not on the wrong track, in the widest sense of the word, when their occupation, their love life, they married the wrong person, they moved to the wrong neighborhood, they live in the wrong state, they had the wrong kind of nose job when they had plastic surgery done 10 years ago, that something is wrong. Nobody would believe that they're on the wrong track, or nobody would be looking for the right track unless they believe they're on the wrong track. And everything from searching, trying to get on the better side of the great cosmic forces, trying to get in touch with my universal self, all the way from that to Jesus. I wish I hadn't decided to become a tree surgeon at 17. I wish I had gotten on another track. Where I am is the wrong track. People would not believe that there was a better track, that they should be there. They would not be searching for the way unless they believed that they were not on the way, that they were on the wrong track. I did that, and then I said, I was hoping it'd help a little. That information, let's call that information just for the sake of, I hate to prate about it, but I'll assume that if at least Shakespeare was here, he would understand what I'm talking about. Not that, but never mind. Take that as being info. And then I was saying, do you realize, rhetorically he asked, what that info would do were it to fall into the wrong hands to the present unemployment figures? Of course, as any good comedian, which I am not, but I was going to use that example, as any comedian would know, if the joke don't work, retelling it's not going to help. But wait a minute. That could be true in that form of vaudeville. How about, but on other stages, pulpits, temples, they do it. Day after day, year after year, millennial after millennial, same thing every day. Just because it doesn't fly today, it's the only story they got. I mean, if the congregation took the man aside, the leader of any institution, and said, hey, you know, this thing you've been talking about, whatever it is, it could be an economic institution, bureaucracy, it could be academic, it could be religious. And they could take him aside and say, look, we like the general cut of your jib, but this story you're putting on us, this explanation about what the nature of life is, what the gods want us to do, what the economic flow of the free marketplace wants us to do, what the great spirits of Plato wants to do, whatever it is that the guy's selling. He says, the congregation tells him, we like the way you dress, we like all that, but the story, the explanation you're giving us, you gave it to us the first night you got here, and we listened, and do you remember how it went over? And the guy had to go, oh, yeah. No, we forget, opening night. But that was 3 years ago, and you just keep telling us the same thing. Have you noticed that it hadn't gotten any better? The response hasn't gotten any better. And the guy would have to, at least to himself, go, yeah, but what the hell do you want from me? It's the only story I got. Now, forget about that. Think about where you are plugged into life, where all institutions are plugged into life. You don't see what that would do? The adverse effect that would have on the current figures regarding unemployment. Of course, maybe I was foolish enough to assume that you knew I wasn't talking about just out there at work. It's what your neurons are doing. It's what your nervous system is involved with. Yes, but I think all the time I don't have any parts of my brains are unemployed. Boy, I wish you hadn't said that. If that's true, you didn't ask me, but my advice is keep that to yourself. You mean you're thinking all you can right now? As much as I dislike sarcasm, even I sometimes need a hobby. Had to go. The unemployment figures I had in mind, although it does fly out there if you're still dealing in the world of metaphor, but what if this information fell into the wrong hands? That is, what if in the wrong place, the unexpected part of your intelligence, your own brain, you heard what I was talking about. And then the rest of your brain that believes it is involved with these great activities, the stress of having to deal with everyday life, the stress of having to put up all these other idiots that always have these inexplicable, these unworkable solutions, explanations, all these projects, everything I try to do, everything that's decent, the whole frustration of dealing with life out there, right? All these damn committees, all these small states have been set up. What the hell, what's an Albania? What's a Yugoslavia? There was no such thing. Somebody whipped this on me. Here I am, I'm the Balkan Peninsula. I was doing all right, and now suddenly, I got Greeks over here, I got Turks, I got, they call these people Bulgarians. Have you ever, Bulgarian? What the hell's a Bulgarian? There is no such thing as a Bull. And they're all up there, and they're talking. And half of them don't even need a job. They do not belong where they are. A bunch of them are dealing with a kind of despicable padding of the payroll. They got relatives, they're doing nothing. Unemployment. What if that part of your brain heard any of this information? I guess I got obscure enough. The unemployment figures, if you could see that they exist, the parts of your brain that you think are working, that are freeloading, looked at another way, you think, well, I'm thinking all I can now. Don't tell me that. God, hope not. Tell yourself, boy, I hope that's not true. But there are parts of the brain there seems to be unemployment figures you just never looked at that way going on inside of your own neurons. And what if they understood? What if they heard what I was talking about? Well, I guess we have about taken that kind of, if we're going to call it a metaphor, if not a herniated simile. I guess we have ripped that sucker apart and thrown it down and probably run over it with an 18-wheeler. And probably some of the missing pigeons are now pecking on it, so. I suspect some of you might be glad to know that I guess I'll just move on to another subject. Okay. How about home ec? I did want to pick up one piece where we left more or less the last taping, also connected that I was pointing out in the same vein from last tape. I don't have time to recount it all. Regarding the fact that man, in spite of what Attila's third wife, yeah, I know, Rousseau, said, man is not born free. Man is not free. Man is not going to be free. But man is going to talk about it. Man is not going to be any more free than any two people, any institution, any discussion is going on, and it not be a discussion. You understand that? Two people are not going to get up and dance and there not be a dance. And I tried to get you to also consider that insofar as freedom, ordinary people, if indeed they could be set free, just the way they describe it, that they would go, I think as some of you cab drivers like to call it, bonkers. Or is that yonkers? Well, you'd go nuts if an ordinary person would. And then I further tried to get you to consider, we tried to consider as a group, as an institutionalized entity, that it would be possible somebody neurally subversive could actually put up with any kind of freedom. Because they could still work, but they'd be working in such a way that would not be tied to and dependent upon what seems to be out here. And on that basis, what I started to say was that if you did have that kind of freedom, that you would, it'd be another way that you could describe at times what seems to be the strangeness, was about as strong as we put it last time we were taping, extreme weirdness, spookiness, at times people feel of being involved with this, if there is such a thing as this, and if indeed you're involved. But at times it feels kind of like, weird, strange. And I was pointing out that the strangeness is that when the dance is going on between this and you, if there is a you and there is this actually going on, when the dance is right, it is almost a kind of freedom. And so if there is that kind of freedom, I always just wanted to hit the ones that we were talking about when I quit, that what it might represent, what it might make possible. And freedom has nothing to do with politics, political freedom, the chains of economics, and etc. It has to do with secondary freedom, that is now freedom from the secondary affairs of life, from the secondary building site neurologically in you, which is the only one you know, but it's a building site up here as opposed to a building site being at the primary level somewhere further back in the nervous system, in time and in you, of just sex and need for comfort and to stay out of the elements and etc. But this kind of freedom, what we were trying to get at when we stopped, was me suggesting the kinds of ways in which it might manifest itself. That if you were being freed from the attempt to feel that you needed to be freed from having to cope with anything, such as those infernal frustrations and inefficiencies of city life. And of course, there are many other institutions that apparently offer help into how to cope with the inefficiencies of city life, such as go to a psychiatrist and he'll help you cope with the frustrations of life. Unless, of course, you were dumb enough to say, well, hey, look, if you can do that, right on, I got my money. How much is it? $200 an hour? Okay. How soon will I be over it? Well, now, wait a minute. I thought you were an intelligent person. And so here it comes. What you've got is help being offered to cope with the frustrations of life. But I guess enough of you already see what I was going to be so crude to put into words. No sarcasm. It's the way it is. It's inescapable. You are now simply in a new school of frustration. Somebody's going to help protect you from a shark, and you jump in, and you're with a school of mad carps. They're willing to take your money to help teach you how to deal with the frustrations of sharks, except now you're all these carps, and it's like it's the Marx Brothers magnified. Or they want to take your money and tell you they'll do it, and you say, how? And we don't know. Well, when will it take place? Well, we're not sure. Well, can you guarantee that, that I'm going to pay you? I guarantee my money's good, so do you guarantee your service? boy, where'd you come from? And so from one view you can say, Jesus, Holy Mother, I'm paying somebody to teach me to cope with frustrations, and this is, do I have to say it? This is more frustrating than the crap I was putting up with. At least the crap I was putting up with is frustrating me. In a sense, didn't cost me anything. It's just it's my kids, my ex-wife, my boss. In fact, my boss pays me a salary. And so, but he drives me nuts. So in a sense, I'm being paid to put up with that. And now you're going to charge me, and this is more frustrating than that is. All right. I was suggesting the possibility of being freed from the need to cope with anything. I was going to say the freedom to cease having to explain yourself, having to excuse your inability to change. That is, your inability to remove invisible handcuffs, your inability to take off a straitjacket, the chains that bind you, your inability to remove them. You have to excuse yourself, but on the basis that you got no idea what the chains are, you wouldn't know them if you fell over them, you can't see them, you can't identify them, and yet you're made to continually have to say, excuse me, what? You have to tell why you are not currently changing, why you're not removing these chains that you can't even see, you can't find. I mean, there are people around who will tell you that they can help you find them. Okay, how much? All right, here it is. When will you show them to me? Wait, no, you don't understand how this goes. And of course, what you got to understand how this goes is it doesn't go. This is all part of the same. Is it going? It's the same drama. You just stand there on Broadway or wherever, and you think, well, over here's a playhouse, over here's one. There's a comedy going over here. There's a drama. Behind me is Roseland. It's dancing. There's all sorts of things going on. No. It's all one big theater. The critics are on stage. It's according to where you see them. The people on stage are criticizing the critic. That's the show, as much as the other way. Everyone has to explain why things are not going correctly. Another way I could point out, if there was such a kind of a new revolutionary freedom internally, it might also be a freedom which sometimes I think I should not even mention this, but to get freed from having any particular concern or regard over your personal place in line. You know which line I mean. It is just not as material and perhaps sociological or classic statement of the spectrum and stratas of society as it sounds, because it affects you internally. You're tied there. But it is a kind of freedom of having no particular regard over your place. And your place, I should put in the adjective, your secondary place, because the line is all a secondary manifestation. That's all class is. That's all any social structure. That is, as opposed to primary. Unless you're going to take as a primary family paradigm, let us say, a lion pride as a primary social class strata, which I'm not saying you don't, it's not absolutely unimaginable. It just simply would not stand you in very good stead if that was the basis of your attitude towards society while living in the city. I would have to suggest to you that you're in, as they say in psychiatry, for a hard row to hoe, especially in concrete, but you're in for trouble. The point being, those of you who thought you lost your place within 2 minutes, you're supposed to be concerned about your particular position in line. You know, the line, one stretching over the hill over to that building. You're supposed to be concerned. You're supposed to have regard over it. The line is secondary. The line is a hobby. The line is not primary death. The line to the arbitrary does not run to a primary death. It is to a secondary death. That's why it is so upsetting. That is why everyone's so concerned about, I'm about to die. You don't know whether it's now, but you're about to die. It could be a few years, but it could be now. And everybody's so concerned about, how do I look? You know, how am I dressed? Will I have the house paid off before I die? And it sounds, from one view, silly. But it's not silly. Quite reasonable. Educated people are very concerned, will I have my mortgage paid off before I die? How will my wardrobe? What will they bury me in? What will my friends think? That is secondary death. That is secondary concern. And there is a kind of freedom from having any further regard over your particular place in line. I guess that I will give you the final example for the night as if I had a choice. We got 1 minute left. So this is the final. How about this kind of freedom to finally would free you to think whatever, whenever, and as much as you want to. How would that be for freedom? To think whatever you wanted to, think whenever you want to, and by God, if I may say so, and by God, to think just as much as you want to. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds suspiciously like success. I'll admit it will not show up in line. But so until next time, there won't be a next time.